deep into the season and deep into the evening time, there's still light at this time of year, this time of abundance. And there's warmth in the soil, and there's warmth in the air that's around us. And there's so much growth here in Glebe House Gallery and Gardens. So much growth in the grasses, in the flowers, in the shrubbery, and in these massive trees around us. All capturing so much carbon and putting out so much foliage. And that foliage in turn is giving shelter to a vast number of species of insects and all of the arachnids feeding on them. And then of course the bird life feeding on them. The sounds that are around us have changed. The adult birds aren't singing anymore. Instead, they're hiding in the dense shrubbery. They're using all of this extra food, all of this food that the energy has provided, the energy of the season. They're using it so they're able to change their feathers, completely molt in preparation for the seasons to come. And the young birds that we can hear in the trees among us, they're making the chorus at the moment. And they're communicating to each other as they learn how to hunt and how to fend for themselves. Vital to be able to build up their fat reserves before they move on for the seasons to come. Such a time of growth, such a time of abundance. Welcome to summer. And what a summer it's been. It's been a summer of challenges for all, for both human, animals and plants alike. After such a cold and such a late spring, such a late start to the energy that all around us needs to grow, we then had the hottest June on record. Records tumbled all over the country, the hottest June Ireland has ever seen. And that put the enormous trees like this mighty beech behind me under huge stress. Their massive root system that spreads out underneath, all of the tiny little roots, the little hairs that come out from there, needing to try and suck up 60, maybe 70, maybe more litres of water every single day. They will have been under all sorts of stress with the hard soil and the lack of water that was there. And how that changed in July. The weather flipped completely, and we had one of the wettest Julys that we've ever had. Huge amounts of rain day after day after day. And of course that's softening the soil around us. Good for the availability of water, but making it difficult for those root systems, making it difficult for the insects that are around us, making it difficult for all the new birds that have just emerged and just hatched. And the days were grey, so even though they were long, the amount of light, the amount of energy wasn't as available as some years. As well as the birds, the frogs, the spiders, the dragonflies, the wasps, so many different creatures that are trying to hunt the small little flying insects that are all around us. There are bats. At this time of year, the bats are feasting on the abundance of life. With this little bat detector, I'm hoping we'll pick up some of the different species that use Glebe House and Gallery as a place to shelter, as a place to sleep, stay safe during the day, and then to forage at night. The few different bat species that we have here in the area are incredible. Each bat eating over 3,000 midges per night. And the bats that are here, there'll be big nursery colonies under the eaves of the roofs. And those females, they'll give birth to one pup each year. And at this time of year, late in the summer, the pup and the female will be out flying, the pup trying to figure out their way and trying to figure out how to catch those 3,000 plus bugs every single night. So the sounds this machine are picking up are the sounds of the bats calling. And the bats, they shout. Every little one of those taps is them shouting. And they shout and they listen for the echoes that come back. It's sonar. They're building up a picture of the landscape around them. A picture of all the shrubs, all the branches and twigs, the leaves, and crucially, a picture of all the flying insects. Remember, over 3,000 bugs every night, every bat. They have to be very efficient at building up that picture. They can see like us, but they rely on this sonar, this calling. And they call all night as they're hunting. As they're on their wing, they're shouting. And thankfully for us, they shout at a frequency way above our hearing. Hence this little machine is required to be able to hear that pipistrelle bat that is hunting right above us as we speak. With so many of the birds in their resting stage, regenerating those feathers and building up all those fat reserves, and the new birds starting to explore their new world, their exciting world all around them, the world of abundance. Overhead, currently, we can hear house martins and we can hear swallows, and they are harvesting so many of the insects, because now summertime is the time of meadows, it's the time of flowers, and it's the time of insects. Meadows like we see here, stretching out right down to the shores of Garton Lake. Meadows that are managed so well by the gardening staff of Glebe House. These meadows provide a refuge for a vast number of different insects. Beautiful, bright blue, electric blue damselflies are hovering about, mating as we speak. Butterflies are fluttering around. It's just about warm enough for them in the Irish summer. They need about 15 degrees or so for them to be able to charge up enough to get enough energy to move around from flower to flower. And at this time of year, a huge number of butterflies are here. We have meadow browns and ringlets, grassland specialists enjoying the big diversity of grasses that are here. We have red admirals and peacocks freshly emerged. Their eggs were laid back in springtime by the last generation. And these red admirals and these peacocks, big butterflies, they're now feeding up as much as they can. The red admirals to head off back to the Mediterranean in a few weeks' time, and the peacocks, they'll overwinter in a few weeks' time. But first of all, they need to get as much energy as they can, and the flowers, the meadow spread out all around us, is providing that energy for them. There's a constant hum around us at the moment. And there's a hum of different frequencies with the different species of bumblebee and other characters that are enjoying this meadow. A little earlier in the spring, we heard and we talked about some of the very first queen bumblebees just emerging after their long winter slumber. Those queens are now deep in their hives, still producing eggs at this stage, the last of their eggs, and all of their little clones, the worker bees, the miniature versions of themselves, be those carder bees, be they white-tailed or buff-tailed bees, or be those red-tailed bumblebees, they're all out enjoying all of these different flowers. They're taking the nectar that's inside the flowers for themselves, for their own energy, and they're collecting pollen. They're collecting pollen to feed back to those larvae, to those new babies. And very soon, the new queens and the new males will emerge. In fact, some of the species they already have. And they will start giving us a hope of next year's bees to come. The small copper butterfly was enjoying so many of the gorgeous flowers that are here, such as this knapweed. Looks quite like a thistle, but it has no spikes and tends to come out a little bit later in the summer. And flowers like this, that have a large cluster inside them, they hold a huge amount, a disproportionate amount of nectar. So that's a big reward for the honeybees flitting by here, for the damselflies, for those butterflies, and for all the others. And diversity is the key to these kind of meadows. You see the hawk bits that are here. There's birdfoot trefoil. There's eyebright just all around us. And then there's the beautiful, pungent meadow sweet. When I crush up and sniff some of the petals that are inside it, it gives out a very strong aroma. That aroma you'll often carry with you after walking in these places, because it'll be brushed off onto your trousers or onto your shoes. And of course, it's that aroma which helps attract so many of the insects and helps attract so many of the moths that will be flying at night time, also helping to pollinate and fertilize all of these flowers, turning them into the little seeds and turning them into next year's meadow. Another plant that is enjoying the height of summer is the much maligned, very beautiful ragworth. We've a few different species of ragworth, and unfortunately they've developed a bad name as they have some toxins inside them. And if they're gathered up as part of hay, those toxins mightn't be good for grazing animals. However, they're a native plant, they're a plant that have been here before us, and they're a plant that provide food, provide shelter, provide so much sustenance for a huge amount of different insects. There are many different species of moth and butterfly that thrive on ragwort. In fact, some that could not do without ragwort. And then there's an awful lot of much smaller little bugs, little hoverflies and other characters that need to feed on the ragwort. And they give us a little bright reminder of sunshine, even on a rainy day. Thanks to all the light that's available at the moment, the larch has really taken advantage. It's used so much of that sun's energy to push out all of these delicate, soft little needles, catching that light and taking in air taking in CO2 and of course photosynthesizing, capturing that carbon, turning it into carbohydrates, turning it into energy for itself. And it's not just using that energy to grow twigs, to grow leaves. It's using that energy to develop its seeds. And in spring, we saw this starting off as a green and red, beautiful little larch flower. And now it is developed right into a cone. Still quite early, very sticky, full of sap, protection from the myriad of insects that are around. But soon, the little seeds inside will develop, grow stronger and stronger. So at this time of year, we're getting towards 16, 17 hours of light availability. The trees and all the other plants, of course, are using that energy to their advantage, and they're growing as fast as they can. Their leaves that were already formed last year, preserved in the buds over the winter time and emerged in spring, those leaves, they've grown to their full height. They're now taking in as much of that sun's energy, taking in as much carbon dioxide as they can, processing it, keeping that carbon and turning it into energy. And that allows them to produce their seeds and develop their seeds, like this Chinese wingnut tree. And the Chinese wingnut is one of the many exotic trees that they have here in Glebe Gardens. It's not just a place for native plants and for native animals. It's also a place for the exotic like this. And plants like this, the right plants in the right place, will thrive. They like this damp environment and they like all of that light. And that's crucial, it's essential, that light, to be able to produce such a heavy crop of seeds for the next generation. And of course, most of those seeds will eventually end up feeding the birds and other animals that are around here in the gallery and in the gardens. Our only protected insect in Ireland is the marsh fritillary butterfly. We've about 33 species of butterfly in Ireland, and that's the only one that's protected. In fact, it's the only of any type of insect that has any kind of legal protection. And the marsh fritillary butterfly comes out at the other end of the season. It comes out in early summertime. And it lays its eggs onto the young growth of this beautiful little plant here called the devil's bit scabious. The devil's bit scabious appears now a little bit later in the summertime. It likes damp soils. It appears with so many other of the purple plants that come out, so many of the heathers that are taking over the hills, the knapweed that you'll find in the ditches. And the caterpillars, they will eat and eat and eat away at this plant before protecting themselves for the wintertime and emerging as next year's. And of course, the devil's bit scabious, it also provides lots of food for many other little insects, and it provides many different medicinal uses for ourselves. The lake is quite high this year. There's been a lot of rain. It was a wet July. And that's quite a normal thing for up here in the northwest. And many of the plants are well adapted to it, just like our native poplar tree, the aspen. Aspen is often called trembling poplar because of its habit of its little leaves shaking. The leaf stalks are flattened, so at the tiniest little breeze, the tiniest little hint of moving air, its leaves are able to shake. And they shake and they clatter together, giving quite a distinctive sound. You can tell the sound of an aspen from quite a distance away. They're a tree that are very happy to have some of their roots submerged in water for quite some time. And they drink a huge amount of water up. But as well as that, they help bind the edge of the riverbanks, or in this case, the lake, together. And they provide shelter for so many other plants. And they also provide a buffer, a barrier for any storms that come, any erosion that might be coming from the higher water levels. And they provide shelter for the fish and for a whole load of insects that the fish are preying on, with those roots reaching out into the edge of the lake. Aspen has a very, very short little window. Their leaves only arriving in May, and in another few weeks, their leaves will have started to turn and they'll be dropping them by September. A perfectly adapted tree for our northwest conditions.